Welcome to the Love of the Star podcast. I'm Bobby Belt, Dallas Cowboys insider for 105.3 The Fan of Dallas. He is Brian Broaddus. That is the former Super Bowl winning NFL scout. I guess I shouldn't say former. He won a Super Bowl. That's not getting taken away from him. That's just he is a Super Bowl winning scout. He just
damn long time ago, Bobby. I know that. It's about the same time the Cowboys won their last one. He was a long time ago.
I was, you know what, Brian? I think I was, how old was I when you won your first Super Bowl?
96,
7.
Bob.
I was 7 years old.
7 years old.
I was 7 years old. I was 7.5 because it was January of 97.
Yeah.
And I vividly remember Desmond Howard just owning that game. And I got to say, Brian, the Desmond Howard, he saved me on an immaculate grid the other day when I was trying to guess teams. It came down to it was Packers and Raiders. And I was like, oh, I know who played for the Packers and the Raiders. That would be Desmond Howard. So I was able to hit that, get that right.
There you go.
But Brian is a former scout, a forever Super Bowl winner. So let's get that straight. He's also the co-host of the G-Bag Nation, 2 to 7 p.m. Central, Monday through Friday on 105.3 The Fan in Dallas. He is also the pre- and post-game co-host on the Dallas Cowboys radio network alongside Eric Chiafalo and Zach Wolchuk. Brian, how you doing? It's a little odd. We're getting our first Monday night game this week, so it's kind of throwing us off a little bit in terms of it feels like it should be game day. We're not there yet. We've had to sit even longer on this loss than normal. But how's the week been? You taking some good college football or anything?
No, I actually went and watched my race team try and win a championship at Road Atlanta on Friday, Saturday. We actually just got back here Sunday morning. Been up since about 5 a.m. Eastern getting back here, but made it back. Unfortunately, though, our team, we broke the power steering 3 hours to go in the race. Had a chance to win the thing, and power steering let go, and that was the end of our day. And so, unfortunate. It was things that happen in racing, but when you race for 10 hours, the cars that hold up it's amazing how they do that endurance racing stuff. So it's very cool, but very disappointing. It's very heartbreaking. Kind of, my sports life is very heartbreaking at times. And it would be very heartbreaking if the Cowboys don't find a way to beat the Chargers, because then it turns into bye week, and then bye week turns into a lot of questions. And when you have a 3-3 football team, now it's really to that point where, okay, where did this thing go wrong the first 6-7 weeks? And that's what we're going to have to dive into if they don't find a way to beat the Chargers, which I feel like it'll be a difficult game. But we're here to break it down for you.
Yeah, we'll break that down a little bit. We'll get into the Chargers a little bit next segment. We'll kind of break them down. I want to lead off though with kind of what you were referencing there, which is just the magnitude
race car
of
team.
Well, I mean, I'm going to tell everybody that whoever you were competing against for the championship, I'm going to make sure history remembers that guy cut your power steering line. That's what happened.
I wish that was the case.
It was him. It was. I wish. Brian, don't say anything else. Just we'll
It's
roll
hard,
with that.
Bobby, racing 7 hours and doing everything you can to stay up front like we did and have it go sideways. So
well, that's what it was. It was a cut power steering line. Anyway, the other thing I want to talk about is just the magnitude of this game. How relevant is it compared to because we were on Sean and RJ, the show that I'm part of on 105.3 The Fan.
Great job on that show.
Thank you very much. We interviewed Nick Eatman on Friday. And Nick said, and that's Nick Eatman from DallasCowboys.com. He says that he believes this game against the Chargers is the biggest game of the year. Not the one against the 49ers. He thought the 49ers was a big one, but he said he thinks this one is bigger because of how you show, are you able to bounce back? It's the game against Kellen Moore. It's the design. It's the offense that you picked over the offense that you shunned, and a chance to see those things go up against each other. Then you lead into the bye week. This could be a very telling week for the Cowboys, I think, in terms of their mental toughness and the offense that they chose. But this definitely is a big game. Do you feel like it's bigger than the 49ers game?
No.
And if it is, no, it's not bigger than the 49ers game.
I'll tell you, Bobby, all these games are big to me, whether it's the Jets, Patriots, every game they play, because there's only 17 of these. There's only you look at these games, and to me, everybody, one of the statements that people always make is this a must-win game? You always get that. Is this a must-win? And I'm kind of like, yes, because I think every game is a must-win because you only play 17 of them.
Yeah.
As we tape this show on a Sunday, the Philadelphia Eagles will be playing the Jets. Philadelphia's undefeated. Say they find a way to win this game. Well, that would make them what? 6-0? 6-0. Say you lose this football game tomorrow on Monday night. That makes you 3-3. You're now 3 games back of the Philadelphia Eagles. That's why they're all must win. You don't have to. Yeah, you really do, because at the end, they're going to add them all up. And they're going to say, okay, you're either 1 game to the good and getting into the playoffs, or you're 1 game to the bad, and you have the 14th overall pick this year in the draft. These games are super important. And I what's unfortunate is the 49er game, as bad as it was, they put a lot into that game. That was a game that was talked about. Team talked about building the way they built their roster around it. But, the most important thing is to try and find a way to win the division. But Philadelphia keeps finding ways to win, and you keep finding ways to lose, give away games like you did against Arizona. Well, you're going to find yourself on the outside. So, yeah, this is a huge game. I think this game is really personal. I don't think the players think of it as personal.
No.
I think Mike McCarthy does. I think Mike McCarthy really thinks this game or has taken this game personally. So we'll see. The players wanted to find a way to play better against San Francisco. They didn't. It was a poorly executed game, poorly called game. Just everything all around it was poor. But Mike McCarthy, his team, has done a damn good job of bouncing back after losses and making them resound victories, if you look at the way the scores and stuff have been. So they're going to need one of those on Monday night. They're going to need to go to the Los Angeles and find a way to beat a pretty good football team.
I've always felt like we've oversold a little bit Zeke and Will Greer know where the bodies are buried. They know this.
That was what a disaster for everybody. How about Will Greer? That was an ass kick in Dallas, New England, no help.
Well,
and then
Trey Lance.
you flip it for Trey Lance, and you're thinking, wow, Trey Lance could help it. What an ass kicking that was.
Now the actual advantage though, players coming in and I know this scheme. I feel like that's less of a benefit as much as former coaches, knowing what former coaches are doing when they're walking in here. So, Brian, when you look at this, who has the advantage here? Is it the Cowboys knowing so intimately the things that a guy like Kellen Moore likes to do with his game plans and his attack? Or is it a bigger benefit for Kellen Moore and Doug Nussmeier to get in Brandon Staley's ear and say, hey, you want to know how to attack this personnel? You want to know where that Cowboys offense is weak? I can tell you exactly the stuff that we avoided doing with them and exactly the stuff that McCarthy's been fighting with me to do with them for a while. And so here's how you can go after. Who's got the bigger advantage? The Chargers having Kellen and Nussmeier on their side, knowing how to evaluate this personnel for the Cowboys, or the Cowboys with Dan Quinn and the players knowing exactly what it is Kellen likes to do?
Man, you got me stumped, because I'm thinking Dan Quinn has an idea of how he would like to attack Kellen Moore. But then Kellen's thinking about watching the tape from Arizona and watching the 49ers tape and kind of getting some ideas, because there's some things that they do in the running game with their pulling of their offense. And it's the same thing that he did in Dallas, especially down in the red zone. Remember when we always used to see Zach Martin pull, and you get guys who are pulling, guys who are playing space and all that. It's very, very similar to that. The running game, if I'm going to give an advantage, I'm going to give the advantage to Dan Quinn here, because when you work in training camp against a guy, you kind of get a feel for how he's going to call the game or how he's going to use his personnel. So I would say that Dan has an advantage. The things that Dan could do is it's going to be a different game, I think, Bobby. And that was a really good question. It's got me just kind of stumped, but I'm going to say, because I hate riding the fence. I'm not a fence.
I know. I get it.
I'd rather just say it and just either be right or wrong. But in my heart, I believe Dan has now what's going to be different for Kellen Moore is, how does Dan Quinn use Micah Parsons in this game with no Leighton Vander Esch?
Yeah.
That's what, because Kellen's going to understand what Dan does with Micah Parsons as a rusher, or how to kind of move them around. But as an off-ball linebacker, how's that going to affect some of the things he's going to try and do in this game? I think this is really, really I was talking to Will McClay about this a while ago.
Well,
and it was in a way of, I was asking him about his edge rushers and the thought about, well, how your edge? He goes, and Mike and all this. And this was a while ago. This wasn't anything recent, but I was just kind of going through, and I said, I asked him about his edges, and he's like, yeah, we've got plenty of edges. We got plenty of guys that can rush. So to me, this is one of those times where, okay, he's going to be able to pull Micah back and then be able to kind of use the guys that, the Fowlers and Armstrong and Williams. And they need a big game from a Sam Williams. They need somebody to just be a difference maker. And maybe it could still be Micah on some limited pass rush stuff, but I have a feeling, and by the way, Bobby, I know you watch these tackles for. I was surprised. I was really, really surprised how much pressure that when you look at these offensive tackles, Rashawn Slater was struggling in some of these games with some of the pressures, and I was kind of feeling like I'm going to watch Rashawn Slater, and I'm going to be like, oh man, well, knee bend and power and all that. But you go through and watch some of the pressures that the Chargers have had to deal with. Slater and Pipkins, the tackle on the right side, that's been a little bit of an issue for those guys. The quarterback's good moving around and kind of avoiding, but, not getting sacked and stuff. But, man, I'll tell you what, I was surprised at Rashawn Slater. So my point is that, they need somebody opposite, and they need maybe Lawrence. Lawrence has got to have one of those games too, where maybe that this Pipkins, he could take advantage of him. Yeah,
I do think Pipkins is more vulnerable. Here's the thing: I think we got to contextualize. But Slater.
I'm sorry that didn't answer your question. I do think Dan Quinn has, but the difference is going to be, and I'm sorry, I was just meandering along.
No, you're good. You're good.
But what I was thinking about was it's going to be different for Kellen Moore if Micah Parsons plays off-ball linebacker. That's now, how do you account for him there? Because usually you account for him as an edge and not as the linebacker. Does that make sense?
No, it totally makes sense. The only thing I know is that Kellen Moore also has an awareness that, like I said, Kellen Moore's been involved in the times where they've had to, move Micah around because of stuff. He's been part of those game plays. A little bit of, let me draw back to another Dallas sports.
What do you think about that? What do you think?
About who has the advantage?
Who has the advantage?
The Chargers. I think the Chargers have a significant advantage because here's the way I look at it is that, and this is something Nick Eatman and I discussed.
Did you think the Chargers have the advantage too?
He did too. You may know Kellen and you may know what Kellen likes to do. You don't know what Kellen likes to do with these players. Like when the personnel's different, he may feel like he has access to things he didn't have there, or the things he had access to in Dallas he doesn't have here. And so you don't exactly know that. Yeah. Whereas the last 3 years, Kellen was getting an earful from Mike about all the different things Mike thought he could do with the personnel. So Kellen's going to have that on his mind. And Kellen knows I'll draw the analogy here. When the Mavericks played the Golden State Warriors in 2007, and everybody was like,
the 1 seed,
when they were the 1 seed, one of the biggest things they talked about is how did Golden State take away Dirk? And it's the guy who helped build Dirk into the player he was, Don Nelson knew, I know exactly what he can't do.
Yeah.
Take this away from him. He can't do this. And that's my thing, is that they may not be drawing up the game plan for the defense, but Kellen and Nussmeier can go right up to Brandon Staley and say, hey, you want to know everything we thought Dak couldn't do? You want to know everything we think these receivers can't do? All these things with this personnel? Because really the only difference in personnel.
You can watch the San Francisco tape and see that.
Yeah,
or
really
watch
the
Arizona tape. You know,
really the only
the thing that when you start to talk about the thing when you've watched the Chargers play, they got Austin Eckler, one of the best receiving running backs in the game.
Yep.
Do they throw him any screens or anything? No, they're throwing those wide receiver screens. They don't throw a running back screen. I didn't see a running back screen.
So Eckler's been out since week 1.
I know he's been hurt.
Yeah.
But if you look at if you watch the way that Kellen Moore calls his, it's the same way.
Yeah, that's true.
It's the same offense.
That's true.
And maybe when he gets Austin Eckler, if again watch people hate when I say again, but when you watch the 49er film, they throw a screen pass to McCaffrey that goes for a boatload of yards.
Yeah.
If I'm Kellen Moore, I'm trying to throw a screen to Austin Eckler. But he'll throw a wide receiver screen, or he'll throw, it's funny. It's watching the same offense with a quarterback that, is pretty damn accurate throwing the ball,
It's funny though. I did notice, and you know what? Let's we'll pause down because we're about to jump into the actual preview of the players.
Pistol.
There's a lot of pistol. We're going to jump into the specifics of this Chargers team here in just a sec. First, I
interrupted you. I interrupt you. Say it real quick before you say. Hey,
just that I think that not that Kellen and Nussmeier know the exact weaknesses that exist with all this personnel. The only player that's really different for them from when Kellen was here was Brandon Cooks, and the Cowboys haven't figured out how to use Brandon Cooks yet. And
that's a fact.
He has intimate 4 years worth of knowledge of watching these players grow up and being around them. And so I think that, and look, I think this is absolutely, you want to talk about personal for Mike, I think this is a very personal game to Kellen Moore.
I agree with that too. The thing about it is too, this offense, it might be to the point where you might not have to worry about covering everybody up if they're just going to throw slants and stuff all day.
Yeah.
The thing about it, and it's not just creativity. It's not that. There's people now in the league, and I was in airports this weekend just talking to people, sitting and waiting for planes and things. And it just seemed like that people were like, that it's going to take time for Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy hadn't called plays for 6-7 years, and they're trying to tell me that, but they're also worried about how, and I hate to use the word how dynamic or how, and not everybody can be the 49ers or the Rams or any Cincinnati or these teams that have these young coaches that really, mix you up. But there's people that are like, Mike can't call plays in a while, but is the offense to the point, or is it one of those that you could like, wow, they're taking advantage of this defense? And that's why I made my crazy prediction. And my crazy prediction, and I know we're going over, Bobby. I'm sorry, it's my fault.
No, you're good.
My crazy prediction about an offensive coordinator change after week 6 was if the team was 3-3, but Mike has given up play calling before. He gave it up to Tom Clements. You know, I think it would be, but the biggest problem I saw, Bobby, and if you listen to us on 105.3 The Fan, I was worried about new coordinator, new quarterback coach, new offensive line coach, new running back coach. There was so much change to the offense, so much change from the staff standpoint. I was thinking, man, this might take a while. The offense might be good, but it might be good in week 10. When they kind of figure everything out.
It's not going to click right away.
It might be too late, man. If this thing goes 3-3, it is not going to be a good week for Mike McCarthy.
Look, I'll say this. I'll say this, and just before we jump into the Chargers, I'll say that broadly, I think sometimes you feel like there's some faux anger, or you're trying to fire somebody up or whatever. I think Jerry Jones is legitimately upset right now, and I think that there's a moment
here. Those interviews good. I thought you did a good job of interviewing him, man. It's Jerry when he's mad. That's not a good interview. He's tough because he's going to question. He's going to question your questions.
Yes, and he did, and that's fine. There's a lot of upset people in that building right now, and I think it's just frustration. Look, winning cures all. If they win this game, a lot of that anger will go away. But you got to win this game. You were listening to the
3-3. You can't.
Nope.
That'd be tough. Yeah.
Can't sit on the bye week with 2 embarrassments on national television.
Nope.
You are listening to the Love the Star podcast. The Love the Star is an Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian. Specific to the Chargers.
That's your fault.
I know. I'm awful. Looking at this Chargers team,
yeah.
we know obviously Justin Herbert is one of the more naturally gifted quarterbacks in the NFL. Mm-hmm. They have weapons. Joshua Kelly is a good runner. I think he's had his struggles at times, but I think he's a talented runner. Right. They're getting Austin Eckler back. We know they've got a lot of really talented players on defense. Does it always come together? Not necessarily, but man, they've got some guys there who can play. Like, we know the talent level. It's just not always been realized. It's not always come to fruition. That's headlined, by Bosa and Khalil Mack and what they can do as pass rushers. But let's start here in the trenches on the offensive line side.
Have they listed anything on Bosa?
Bosa is questionable.
Okay, because the toe and hamstring injury was kind of something that he was dealing with.
Yep.
I know during the week. I didn't know what the final designation was for him.
Yeah, Bosa is listed as questionable. If he's back though, and I mean Khalil Mack is coming off a 6-sack game or whatever he had.
Yeah, the Raiders didn't do a very good job.
They couldn't
blocking him, but
Raiders didn't do a good job blocking. Raiders didn't do a good job tackling. I saw a lot of broken tackles in that game.
Yeah.
But when we look at this and you talk about, I want to start with Slater first off, because you had already mentioned him and talked about him. I think we've seen him on tape. He's a really impressive player. He's a really good football player. He's coming off a year where he ruptured a bicep and he was out for the rest of the year. He played 3 games last year, I think, and then he missed the rest of it. So he's coming back from a year off. I believe from what I've heard, he's been dealing with an ankle a lot this year, and ankles can be tough for tackles. Mm-hmm. And so I think he's somebody who's been banged up. I don't think he's regressed or anything. I think he's still a good player. I think he's not 100%, and he's working back from a year off. But I will say that I think he's, at times when I saw some of the stuff on tape, it looked like he was working better in the run game than he was in pass protection. Pass protection seems to be, which makes sense. If you're dealing with an ankle, that kick slide, trying to get out, trying to do different things, that can cause problems for you. But you think there is some vulnerability on this Chargers offensive line?
I do. And I think they've used high draft picks, first-round picks on Rashawn Slater and Zion Johnson. Both those guys play on the left side. So Will Clapp's the center. Matter of fact, it's so weird. Will Clapp's dad and I played football together at LSU. Tommy Clapp.
Oh.
Yeah, New Orleans guys. And then you got is our kid from Georgia, right? Is it Sawyer? Sawyer, yeah, that plays. And then I mentioned Pipkins, the tackle. I was surprised at how many pressures again that Slater gave up, and it might have to do with that ankle injury. But there are times where it's taken every bit of his athletic ability when he gets beat.
Yeah,
like every bit of that athletic ability for him to try and rally back and kind of either push his guy by or get in front of him, or because I was expecting just really a shutdown tackle, and he hasn't been a shutdown tackle. He just hasn't. So I think that these now with a week off, maybe he's got a little bit more health, to his game. But if he's having problems off the edge, and Pipkins on the right side will be your defense's left is having problems, man, that's where the Cowboys need to think about making some hay.
Yeah, and I do think that, look, I mean, I think Lindsley hasn't been great at times. The guards who we're very familiar with, like you just mentioned, they're just from, draft show coverage and stuff like that. Sawyer, Zion Johnson.
Yeah.
There's been some trouble there. I still think Slater, as soon as he gets back to knocking off some of the rust and getting healthy,
he's a fine player.
I still think he's strong. It
surprises me.
Hell.
Yeah. It surprised me the struggles that he did have. That's what surprised me. Like, whoa, wait a minute, what's he? Why is he giving up a pressure here? Oh, why is the guy getting the corner on him here? Oh, why is he not getting in front of this guy?
Now, do you have to judge Pipkins a little differently, or wonder basically give him a little bit of a pass at all, knowing okay, he was having to block up guys like Max Crosby last week, who's one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. Yeah. Do you look at it any differently and go it was a tough day, but Max Crosby gives guys a lot of tough days, or these guys, or do you just think he has the same problems? Because I think we all feel like we don't want to be Colton McKivitz again, where we all felt like McKivitz was going to be somebody that trouble.
The film showed Colton McKivitz having problems, and the film showed when they put Kittle over there as a wing to block to help out.
Yep.
Arizona, Giants. I mean, there were teams that San Francisco were playing. Pipkins, McKivitz. These guys, the film doesn't lie on that stuff.
Oh, totally. No. That's not what I'm not saying. I'm not saying
the film also tell you the truth that the Cowboys didn't take advantage of that either.
100%. No, what I'm saying is not that the film doesn't show struggles. I'm saying, do we have to basically adjust our view of why they're struggling and say you're going against a guy like Crosby? That you're not necessarily going to get the same difficulties because you're not going to go against a Crosby every week. Same sort of thing.
Is Micah Parsons one of the top 3 defensive players in the league?
He is. My only question is, how much is he going to rush? How much are they actually going to
that's the question. I mean, when McKivitz and those guys, that's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to take advantage of these guys when you can. You got to break them down when you can. You can't let Colt McKivitz just have a comfortable game. You just can't. You got to put pressure on these guys. Him and Buford, 2 guys that were struggling. Everybody else on tape, watch all the games.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh, Arizona. What other games did I watch? Did I see them play? Miami. Yeah. Was it Miami? Did they play Miami?
Miami was week 1. Yeah, that was the one where they ran for what felt like 500 yards.
No, it's Pittsburgh. They played Pittsburgh in week 1.
No. Chargers were. Or are you talking about 49ers?
I'm talking about 49ers.
I thought you were talking about Miami.
Yeah, Miami was week 1. You're absolutely right about that.
So when we look at that, that's just kind of where the offensive line stands. I think I still really believe. Look, and I know you believed in Zion Johnson. I can't remember where you fell down on Sawyer, but Zion Johnson, Lindsley has been a good player for most of his career. I just think that part of me wonders, is this new, some of the different things that Kellen wants to do vertically in the passing game, are they just learning, different things that they have to do in pass protection to execute that system? Is there just some growing pains there? It could be something like that. Like I said, I know Slater is banged up. That's where I'm going to lean on with Slater, is that he's been hurt. In fact, he was on the injury report, but he's listed as a full participant this entire week. But when we look at the weapons, Brian,
Keenan Allen
is one of the most underrated players of his generation. I feel like he is such an incredible football player. Yeah. You've got Keenan Allen, you've got Mike Williams. I like these tight ends.
No, Mike Williams is done. Mike Williams.
No, but I know. I'm listening in general who they play with. I know Williams has been out for he missed the Raiders game. He's out for the year. No, I'm just saying, in general,
he's got a knee.
When you talk about the players that they've had there, Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and the running backs and the tight ends and everybody else. I remember this is the team that had trouble finding room for Jalen Guyton, who had been really good at contributing for them. But this is Keenan Allen, and the ball's going to Keenan Allen, and he's still getting the ball. This is Gerald Everett, who I think is really good between the 20s. And then when you get in the red zone, Donald Parham's been a great red zone threat for that football team.
Absolutely.
It's really tough to guard 6'8" tight ends. Yeah. The old Stetson Hatters tight end, Donald Parham there. And then again, what Eckler can do in the passing game, they're not going to throw a lot of screens to him, but Eckler doesn't need screens necessarily either. Eckler can run routes.
Yeah.
And Kelly, I think, is a guy who's shown some stuff on tape that's really encouraging, the way that he can kind of run. So when I look at this group here, Brian, I do feel like there are some weapons here that can challenge you. I feel like the Cowboys are going to say, let's do our best to take away Keenan Allen as much as we can. Let's bracket him. Let's do some different things. But at the same time, Mike McCarthy has said his anticipation is teams are going to attack them with the running game, and that's what their number one priority is going to be each week. I think you do have to tailor it a little bit, though, and say Kellen Moore has never been a guy who just says, let me attack you with the running game. Although he did do it in week 1 against Miami. He ran the ball 40 times.
Sure. I feel like, I'm learning all about these numbers and metrics and stuff like that and quarterback ratings and stuff. Just found out that, that Keenan Allen, Justin Herbert's quarterback rating is 130.5 when he throws the ball to Keenan Allen. He's yet to throw. Pretty good. He's yet to throw an interception when looking at him. And the thing about Keenan Allen, is I don't think he can run out of sight. But I do. I mean, where he makes those contested plays, he's just such a strong-handed catcher, and he can body up guys. And the thing that we've seen a little bit, with what's going on with Gilmore. That maybe people are going to body him up a little bit. I think it's a little bit more difficult to body up, Deron Bland, but
yeah,
it seems like Keenan Allen. They're going to try and get Keenan Allen, I bet, on Stephon Gilmore as much as they can.
Is this a potential breakout game for Quentin Johnston at all, the TCU wide receiver?
Yeah, I think the thing with Johnson is, we saw him in at TCU just make all these plays down the field. I mean, just play after play after play after play, and so that's kind of where I worry a little bit. Because there's another guy that can really run, and then his ability to get to make those plays down the field, the high point in the ball, it might be a little bit of a long strider here, but
it's been a rough couple weeks for him. To start out.
Yeah, the size, the body control, those things made him tough. He's you can tell he's kind of learning his way how to play, because when somebody walks up on him, then there's a little bit of some issue with him. They were big fans in the draft this week of this year of guys out of TCU, because they also took Darius Davis. Yeah. And Davis is a guy, I know it feels like we say this every week, and I know everybody's got a guy like this typically, but Davis is the one that kind of worries me with the way that the Cowboys have had trouble with the little, joystick, quick, shifty players. And Kellen Moore, for his part, has shown, especially in this game against the Raiders, all right, let's put him in the backfield. Let's throw it. Let's give him let's give him a toss sweep. Arizona, San Francisco, everybody's going to copy a little bit or take a wrinkle or two from Arizona. Gave you a really good blueprint how to move the ball, the running game, and then passing game and stuff. And then the 49ers passing game, I think, is elite.
By the way, they are, we'll see if this game's done by the time we're finished, but 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They're up 17-13. They just took the lead on Cleveland, but Cleveland's driving. So they've had a lot of struggles today. Their last touchdown was set up by PJ Walker throwing an interception that then gave them the ball inside the 10. So that was the struggle there. But man, that Cleveland defense has been incredible this year. All right, back to the Chargers really quickly. Is that the guy that you have the most concern about in terms of, is that the X factor guy potentially of just like a player we're not going to talk a ton about, but he may burn you a player or two, is going to be Davis?
Yeah. I think so.
And what do you think about the way the Chargers have run the one example we have of Kelly and Eckler playing in a game? Kellen Moore drew up a lot of runs against Miami, and they had a lot of success with it. Knowing how teams like to attack the Cowboys with the running game, what's your level of concern with Kelly, Eckler, and then whatever amount they decide, hey, let's line up Darius Davis in the pistol. Let's do some stuff here.
Yeah, it has to be some concern, because the way that the Cowboys have shown, some inability. It was really, really poor the first half against Arizona. They came back in the second half much better. Last week they got bullied. They got bullied in the running game. And when Christian McCaffrey is a rare dude when it comes to handing him the football. But this Austin Eckler is no slouch either. He's probably not going to. He probably doesn't have the ability to take it all the way like McCaffrey does. But when it comes to handing him the ball, he's going to get tough yards. He's a low center of gravity runner, nice base, shorter guy. But man, he just you try and get really good shots on him, and you have a hard time doing it. So he is super productive. One of those guys we always talk about, never comes off the field. Just never. I mean, he's that kind of guy. I have a feeling Kellen Moore is going to test this Dallas defensive. I think he's especially going to test the front seven now that there's no Leighton Vander Esch. I'm going to see. I think he's going to see how well Kearse and Clark and Parsons can play the run defense in this game. And you'll see some the pull in stuff. I just these people they'll pin and pull, and there's San Francisco does it, Arizona does it. These guys do it a little bit. So I wouldn't be surprised. It seems like a really good way to run the football against Dallas. Down block, pull guys. Yeah.
Really quickly, let's take a look at the defensive side of the ball for the Chargers, which has been a struggle for them, especially in pass defense. They've given up some big plays in the pass game. They've also played, teams like Miami and that passing game that likes to attack things vertically. So it might be skewed a little bit early on, especially having only played 4 games. But this is a team that struggled on defense a little bit. And this is a team that likes to a little bit of, I don't know about you, Brian. One of the things that kind of stuck out to me when I was watching them defensively, I was like, okay, there's a little bit of a Dan Quinn approach here in terms of they play with a heavy rotation of safeties. And these safeties a lot of them will kind of come up and play sort of almost as hybrid linebackers at times. And so I found that there's a big use of safeties here, less emphasis on traditional linebackers. There's a little, they've obviously got Kenneth Murray there who plays a lot for them on defense.
Physical SOB for sure.
Physical, absolutely. Yeah. This is even with their struggles, there's obviously a little bit of a concern to me in terms of what the Cowboys offense has shown an ability to do regardless of opponent recently. Mm-hmm. It's had its struggles. And so are you going to be able to take advantage of some of the things that I think are available for you down the field? There's been so much discussion about taking shots down the field and their inability to do so that I wonder if they're going to say, look, we're going to do it. We'll do it this week. We're going to make sure we take advantage of it, especially if Kellen Moore and this football team get you into a track meet and you have to throw it. But Brian, where do you see some vulnerability on this defense for the Chargers?
Well, it's the secondary, like you're talking about. They're a team that doesn't blitz a whole heck of a lot. They've come up with 16 sacks. 12 of those have resulted from no blitzing. So they're going to try and beat you with that. Line. The 16 sacks I mentioned, 6 of them are from Khalil Mack, all in one game. Metrics tell you that this team. The average time to throw is about 2.8 seconds on these guys. So, you could see, wow, that's pretty decent time to have to be able to throw. But they play man coverage right around 30% of the time. They play zone the other 70%.
Yep.
They're a big cover 2 team while they're in zone. What's interesting, again, the metrics all kind of shake out this way. Wide open throws, 3+ yards of separation, 24%. Neutral throws, 1 yard to 3 yards of separation. That's 43%. Tight window throws, less than a yard, 13%. Well, think about that. That's 67% of the throws are either wide open or 1 to 3 yards of separation. So that's a pretty high number right there. Not many tight window throws. I'll be really interested to see, though, if watching the 49er tape, and remember after the game, they were surprised of how much man coverage they got in this game.
Yep.
And to me,
a lot of bump and run.
Yeah. To me, I kind of feel like the one guy that could actually play some of that press man is Asante Samuel Jr. I think he's the best cornerback they've got. He's not the biggest guy, but he's not afraid either. Like, he'll line up on both sides, but he's not a travel guy. He's not a travel guy, so you don't see him like, okay, go take CeeDee Lamb or go take. You did see him matched up in the Raider game a couple times against Adams, but I thought that was more by alignment than it was travel. So the scheme, they play off coverage. They like to kind of trying to funnel things back to the inside. And, I think Samuel is a ball hawking type of a guy that I think I would kind of stay away from if I could. Michael Davis on the other side. Now, we've talked about corners that you should attack, Lenore and others, from like last week. Michael Davis is like a long, rangy guy. It takes him some time to adjust. And that's the thing about him is like he just doesn't turn and burst like you see with Samuel. So, you have to be like, okay, well, where's a guy you can maybe take advantage of in some of that zone coverage? If they're going to play heavy zone, Michael Davis, fine. Run him up, run at him like you're going to run by him, and come back to the ball. Some of those easy throws that we've seen, but maybe a little bit more down the field than what we have in the past. I say that if you're going to play a lot of zone coverage, you're trying to hide something here, and I think they're trying to hide. They're trying to hide Michael Davis here.
Real quick, just before we go to the Dean Julia Love the Star mailbag, a pick from you in this Cowboys-Chargers game.
I don't know why I did this. I guess I did it because I always think about the bounce back thing. Somebody on Twitter said, Brian, is Dallas a desperate team? You buying desperate team theory? I think there is some desperation with the Cowboys.
I'm very desperate.
I picked the Dallas to win, and this is probably the wrong thing to do. But I picked Dallas to win 27-24. I think it's going to come down to an Aubrey field goal. I think they're going to have to drive the football. And last time they played, what was a 50-something yard field goal that they played the Chargers? It was kind of weird.
Yeah, it was the Zerline field. It was like 58. It was ridiculous.
It was a crazy long field goal from Zerline. I think the Cowboys, we'll see. Can they hold up blocking? We always talk about that. Can the receivers get open? If they play a lot of zone, I think they can. So I went with an Aubrey field goal late, 27-24.
I have questions about this team after they got run in what was supposed to be their most focused game, their Super Bowl. I don't know about the offensive design of this football team right now, and I think Kellen Moore is going to take advantage of some things against you. So I think this is going to be a tough game. I think it'll be another tough week, a couple weeks, because they'll be into a bye week. I got Chargers 28-16 in this one. And I think that there's going to be these questions are only going to get louder. Can silence them all really quick if you win this football game. But I think that we're in for a long couple weeks leading into a Rams game. So you're listening to the Love the Star podcast. The Love the Star is an Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Did you pick the Niners last week? We both picked the Niners?
I did. I picked the Niners. I picked a much closer game than they actually played against the Cowboys. But
that bounce back thing, it's real. The bounce back game is a real thing, but they could be, 10-2?
So also, what is it? I think also the stat, 22 out of the last 23 times a team has played the 49ers, they've lost the following week. So the 49ers take a lot out of you. And the Cowboys injury report had
to do that. Steelers the same team. Yeah.
Cowboys had 17 guys on the injury report on Thursday, something like that. So, I mean, it goes to show you how physical that game is. All right, Brian, it is now time for our Dean Julia Love of the Star mailbag. Let's go first to this question.
Down. You picking against the Cowboys all the time.
This question from Queen Cowboy Sports. Brian, has Mike McCarthy lost sight of what his role is? I believe he needs to use his offense as a focus for winning games and let Dan worry about the defense. So do you think that there's been enough of basically just let Dan worry about the defense? Don't talk about how I need to let my defense rest, run the ball for them to rest. I need to lean on them. Just worry about your part of it, which is taking control of the offense. Has Mike lost sight of what he
Titans,
needs to do?
Right? You worry about your defense.
I'll worry about my offense. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know what? I think there's a legitimate struggle. I think Mike and these coaches on the offensive side of the ball, I think they are trying to figure out something. Now, I don't think they're sleeping at the office like people were talking about and all that.
Yes, that was a phony, sarcastic report.
Some guff going on there, if you want to use the word guff. But I think there's legitimately there's some concern, and it's not just what happened to the Reds. San Francisco will make you look bad. The problem is you've looked bad against 2 of the last 3 weeks. You've looked bad.
Yep.
So that's the issue right there. I think Mike is focused on the offense. I just don't think, and you said it before, and it's starting to come around. That maybe Mike, and I think this is just the theory you had. This isn't anybody you talked to. Mm-hmm. The relationship between Mike and Dak when it comes to how the offense operates, I think there's some legitimate concerns that both might not be on the same page when that comes to that.
Sure.
So I am not saying that in a way of like, well, Bobby Belt's breaking. No, I'm not saying that at all. I just, you brought it up, and I think there's some legitimate, things that Dak and Mike are trying to work through right now. And if it turns out to be a 3-3 in an open week, then there's going to be a lot of mad people over there.
Absolutely. Next question here from Scott Williams. Any insight as to why they have not targeted Cooks? Training camp info and chatter seemed promising. Yeah, we are not seeing the Brandon Cooks that we saw during OTAs, mini camps, and preseason.
3 of Dak's, 4 interceptions have been targeted at Brandon Cooks?
Yeah.
I think that's right.
Look, see, that's one of the things, and we talked about it a little bit last week. Brandon Cooks has been plug and play 1,000 yards with 4 different quarterbacks and 4 different systems. Why are you struggling here? Something's not right. And so I don't know. Some of me wonders, have you been sending him have you been designing route concepts that make sense for a guy like Brandon Cooks? They're not, it does not feel like they're taking full advantage of the guy's speed.
No. And what's funny, what if I told you 19% of the Cowboys passes are in the flat?
I totally believe it. Yeah. I totally believe it. Because I've seen it's what it's felt like. I you know what you'd say if you told me it was 19%? I'd say, is it that low? That's what I'd say.
I think Denver's the only team lower than you. Well, I think Denver's the next team that's got more, like you and Denver are kind of battling for those flat passes.
Yeah, I would have thought it was 50%.
With Cooks, there's been times where I think Cooks has been open. And unfortunately, Dak might have said, okay, I'm going to go here with the ball. I'm going to go here with the ball, and not allowed Cooks to clear or Cooks to get it. If he somehow
Dak here, I'll say this: Dak is overthinking. Dak is overthinking in this offense.
Wow. Okay.
Do you disagree?
No. I mean,
I think it looks like he is.
I just feel like it's. He looks like he's handcuffed on some of these plays.
And I think he's frustrated by that.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It looks. I'm a scout, okay? When I had questions about the offense or defense, I go ask the coaches. I'm not going to sit there and act like, oh, well, this route says. I know that I saw things in training camp to my eye that was encouraging about making things easier for Dak throwing the ball and easier for receivers getting separation. I saw that with my own eyes. The Arizona game was a really bad one for that, and the 49er game was a bad game for that. It was like 46% of the passes were with open routes, lowest they'd had all year. So I sound like number cruncher guy now, but I'm learning.
Numbers matter.
No, they do matter. They do matter because you kind of can say, okay, well, that makes sense. Why are 19% of the passes going to the flat? Because they are. You watch the game. That's where they're going.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Next question here from Brandon Dubois. Can the Cowboys win meaningful postseason games without altering their offensive game plan? Will Mike McCarthy be willing to alter the plan in order to have a more creative offense? I will say, if they were to play in the playoffs today with this team that we've seen, no. You can't. That's the thing, is that's what this whole discussion has been about, is that something is broken with the offense and they have to fix it.
Yeah.
How much can legitimately be tweaked in week 6, Brian? Is it just tweaking concepts? Is it
if they're gonna play a bunch of zone coverage like the Jets did and New England did, Dak should have a nice game. Yeah, if they're going to get a lot of man, they have got to find what the best play they had last week was the pass to Turpin, motion left to right, set up like in a bunch, and then scatter out of that. Get him up the field. That needs to be more of that. That needs to be more of what the offense needs to look like. But yeah, I don't know how many tweaks that he can really make. I think Mike's struggling a little bit as a play caller, kind of finding some rhythm doing this.
Sure. It's been a long time since he had to do it. Mm-hmm. All right, last question here from Mr. Hot Nichols. And I'm going to let you answer it first.
Hot Nichols.
Before I give mine. I'll let you answer it first, okay?
I mean, I understand how creative you can be, but just use your damn name.
Mr. Hot Nichols.
I'm sorry, man.
Thank you for your service, Mr. Hot Nichols. He's a veteran, Brian.
Is he a veteran?
He is, yeah.
Well, he's like Commander Hot Nichols, or. All
right, maybe that's where he got the nickname, was from the military. I don't know. Yeah. Mr. Hot Nichols
Major Hot Nichols.
And Major Hot Nichols. General Hot Nichols is asking, and you'll answer first. Odds of Dak not being here after next season because he just doesn't want to be in Dallas anymore.
Oh, it's odds of him on his own?
Or next season. So when his contract is scheduled to run out, odds of him not being here because he doesn't want it.
28%.
Okay. I'll go 40. I think the first time in my life, I've been around the Cowboys since Dak's rookie year, like been in the locker room following the team.
You think he's going to ask to just don't resign? Don't
know. I get the sense that, they can't tag him, so he doesn't even have to ask. He can just let it go. This is the first time in my life when you watch him and you listen to him talk, it's the first time in my life I've been like,
he's fed up with your BS questions.
He feels exhausted. Yeah. Not just exhausted. He feels exhausted with the life of the Cowboys quarterback.
What if they change? Does you think he wants to go through another change?
I don't know.
Do you think
that's what I'm saying? I think a lot of this is just he's becoming excited by the fatigue can set in.
You breaking news, or you just
no. Careful now. Don't. We had that happen once before with Deebo Samuel. Remember, where people were like, Brian Broaddus says they'll trade for Deebo Samuel. So no, this is just my own sense watching him is just.
Did I say we were going to trade for Deebo Samuel?
No, you just said that's the kind of move Jerry would make, and then somebody published that that's what you were saying. No, here's what I'm just saying is that I think that the sense I get is Dak started like anybody 8 years of just getting hammered by narratives and the whole circus that comes with being part of the Cowboys. I think can wear you down, and I think that it looks like on him, just when we talk to him in the media, we watch him on the field, we watch him during games, he looks more tired than he ever has before. And it's week 5, week 6, whatever. And I think it's something to watch.
Mr. Percentage that made the Trey Lance move in order to replace Dak.
I don't know about to replace Dak. It was definitely a move that was made as like, let's create some leverage because he's kind of got us by the balls. I think that was what was going on.
Okay.
Or create the illusion of it. But I mean, he's here and then they'll give him a shot. So that does it for us here today on this very extended. We went long today. This is an extended episode.
What, man. You are like so reckless doing this podcast now.
What did I do?
So reckless with all the stuff you have going on.
We had a question. I just answered a question from General
Double Nichols or
General Hot Nichols.
Hot Nichols.
Yeah, General Hot Nichols. The only reason I didn't use his display name was because it was hashtag long live something, and I don't know how to pronounce his name. So General Hot Nichols. I appreciated your question and your service, even if Brian did not. Brian looks like he's gonna kill it. Brian appreciates your service too. We're just kidding. Yeah. That does it for us here today on the Love the Star podcast. See, this is what happens when we're going 54 minutes, Brian. Yeah, I get loopy at the end.
Peyton's having a heart attack.
So for Brian Broaddus and Peyton Russell and his mustache, I'm Bobby Belt. We'll talk to you guys again next time. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest updates. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.